Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 2 of Showtime's Yellowjackets, entitled F Sharp. One of the things that I want to talk about the most about this episode, which I really enjoyed, but there's a couple of things that got me just a little bit worried. Nothing important, just a little worried about how the show is going to play out going forward. So what I mean by that is, I'm going to actually start with this because I want to spend more time talking about the stuff that I found intriguing. But, you know, last week I mentioned that the show, it's almost interesting that I use this exact term to describe it, but I said that the show has a lot of different plot threads kind of branching out from it. You know, that there's all kinds of different angles that they can go with multiple characters in multiple timelines, and I used the term branches, and I thought it was interesting that there's been actually some heavy branch visuals in these first two episodes. It's a stretch to call it a branch, whatever the girl falls onto at the beginning of episode 1, but they're like sticks and stuff that's poking out of the ground. Call that branches. We have a guy in this episode, the father who fell on top of the tree branch, and the tree branch broke off. Like, lots of interesting branch imagery. But I mentioned that last week as a pro. Like, they have so many different directions that they can go. This week, they added in even more questions and potential themes and directions. And my only concern is I don't want the show to start to feel muddled. Like, they've got so many different themes and concepts going on simultaneously that it starts to get a little bit sloppy. Like, that's the only thing that worries me. Right now, I'm kind of sitting in a place where I have pretty good faith that they're going to handle how they tell this story pretty well. But I am a little bit concerned with shows that kind of like layer on more questions without giving any answers. And this show is giving some answers as well. But once I start talking about some of the stuff I like, because I do still like these things that they're introducing, but I'm going to point out some of the things that I'm like, okay, now this is a different kind of, possibly a different kind of theme or concept that is being introduced, or plot line that kind of just adds on to the pile. So I'll talk about that as I come to them, but I'm going to start right now with talking about Misty, because I think Misty has the best storyline in this episode. Misty's kind of like the focus of this episode, and they did a lot of interesting stuff with Misty, and I want to talk about how interesting Misty is as a manipulator. Like, this episode established Misty as like a premier manipulator who delivers a masterclass in manipulation, right? Present day, we see Misty. I'm gonna kind of start on like the lower end of her manipulations and kind of move to the bigger stuff. So we actually, I think very early in this episode, we see Misty on a date with a guy who's clearly not into her. And she kind of like shames and manipulates him into staying on the date. She manipulates him into taking her home, which I'm going to circle back to how that's a manipulation. And then she manipulates / shames him into coming in, presumably for sex, which gets ruined with Natalie being in there with the gun. I thought that scene was actually pretty funny, how the guy dipped out after he saw Natalie in there with the gun. But she does she manipulates this guy on like a minor scale relative to the major manipulation she does in this episode. And I just think it's interesting to kind of ponder the direction that this show might take Misty, particularly at the crash site throughout the rest of the season, because like now we can see how young manipulative Misty becomes adult 2021 manipulative Misty, and I'm curious to see. I think that's going to be fun to watch as the season plays out. But back at the plane crash site, Misty gets off the plane after it crashes and is the only one that kind of seems to have her wits about her. She starts tending to everybody medically. She chops off that one coach's leg without a second thought, as to kind of like make a tourniquet for his leg to stop the bleeding, and makes a tourniquet for his leg to kind of stop the bleeding after she cuts it off. And she's doing all this just really well. Like, she's just running the show. And at the end of the episode, toward the end of the episode, she goes into the woods to go to the bathroom, and she overhears, I think it was Van and Laura Lee. That's her name, Laura Lee, the religious one? Yeah. Basically saying that they'd have been fucked if it wasn't for Misty. And she's like just blown away by this, like, wow, I'm getting respect. And they did a good job of setting up how important that would be to her by opening the episode with her kind of getting bullied over the phone, which was like, did they bullied kids like that in the 90s about anal? Like what kind of kids are talking about anal in the 90s? But I feel like that was almost kind of like inaccurate writing. I feel like now kids might give kids shit like, oh, you do anal like now, but I feel like anal was like still kind of taboo in the 90s, and to the point where kids probably wouldn't even be knowing about that to joke about it. But that's neither here nor there. They're giving her shit about that, and she just gets no respect. So for her to hear that respect coming from her peers who she looks up to, that means a lot to her. So much so that she destroys the flight recorder that was clearly still working and could have helped them be tracked and saved. She destroys that. And now we know that that's essentially if that's not the entire reason for them being stranded for 19 months, it's at very least the start of how they end up stranded for 19 months. And that's the start of the manipulation right there. Like, she manipulates their circumstances to make it so she can kind of like prolong this feeling of respect that she's getting from her peers. And that's such a wild concept to kind of play with, right? And now fast forward to present day, and this is how we know that Misty manipulated the guy that she was on a date with to drive her home, because we see later they're after she meets up with Natalie, they go on they start to kind of go on this mission to find Travis, the guy whose father died off the plane, off the tree branch that I mentioned earlier. And Natalie's about to go find Travis, and her car won't start. And Misty conveniently rolls up like, oh, wow, looks like your car wasn't start. I just happened to be driving by. And she's like, basically says like, I'll drive you wherever you want to go. And Natalie gets to the car and was like, you bought 2 coffees for yourself? I don't know if she understands the severity of this kind of level of manipulation, that Misty would essentially sabotage her car, pretend to show up and not even do a good job of it, pretend to show up coincidentally, which was just ridiculous, and not even have the foresight to think like, maybe I should roll up with, giving Natalie a clue that I had every intention of doing this by buying multiple coffees. And now we know that Misty has a habit of manipulating vehicles, so we can now presume that when she told that guy that she needed to be dropped off because her car didn't start, that was probably a lie. So lots of really interesting stuff with Misty. I'm intrigued at how the manipulation that she's going to do at the crash site over that 19 months and who she's going to become, how we're going to kind of see that manifest in present day. So really interesting stuff with Misty going on there. I want to also talk a little bit about Travis, who is instrumental in this episode. We don't really know where this is going yet. We know that Natalie and Misty are about to go try to find him, but he was going through a lot. His brother was apparently tripping out, and he was still bugging over his father flying out of the plane to save the girls. He goes up. Eventually the body is found in a tree because it landed on this branch after he fell out of this plane. And he goes up there to try to get the body down, and the branch breaks and falls down. Now, this is where I'm wondering if you guys interpreted this way as well. When the branch falls, we see the symbol that is on the back of the postcard that Misty and Natalie both have carved into a tree. Now, the fact that it's carved into a tree, and it's already carved into the tree prior to anyone discovering the body, makes me wonder if there's somebody who's already out there, a person who we haven't seen yet, who was out in this land prior to the plane crashing, who saw that body up there and carved that into the tree, and then now is also probably sending Misty and Natalie these postcards with that symbol drawn into the tree. Like, I'm trying to think how that could have gotten carved into a tree by one of the girls there, if Laura Lee discovers it first, but it's already carved into the tree prior to that. So really interesting angle, I think, that they're going with this symbol here. But this is kind of like the first example of something where I'm wondering, like, now, is this gonna be like this is now kind of like a new, potentially new plot line introduced into here, where, like, is this a person that we don't know of yet who is sending this sending this postcard who carved this into this tree, or is it maybe somebody who is involved in this and is just kind of using that as a reminder? And then also why Misty and Natalie specifically? So at least I think Misty and Natalie are the only ones that have the cards. Did anyone else? I don't think anyone else mentioned having one. Doesn't mean they don't have one, but I don't know if it was mentioned in the episode. I thought that that could be something that could potentially kind of could kind of like start to get things kind of jumbled, because there's already so many different things going on. The idea of exploring something like that, combined with the other thing that I want to talk about, which is Thaisa's son having these issues where he just seems like he's kind of like blanking out, kind of. And then we see that he has drawings that are covering up his window because he doesn't want some lady in a tree to see him. And I pause on the drawings. They all have a whole lot of eye imagery. Like there's pictures of eyes. The eyes are like crossed out on the people that he's drawing. And I'm wondering if this is now something kind of supernatural maybe that the show is now introducing. And again, I find that interesting on its own. But it concerns me to have, you got this coming of age story, you got this commentary on society and how these people, what the extremes people go to survive. You have comparing, what that's like as to have that happen to you as a kid, and then how that affects you as an adult. There's a whole lot of heavy duty shit that's already been laid out. And the idea that they might be introducing like the supernatural to some extent, like maybe this lady is real, but either way, this kid is going through something. And we got to wonder too, is this something that may have been passed down to him? Like, because I'm assuming that even though Thais is in a lesbian marriage, that one of them actually, carried this kid, and that this is, this kid has some sort of actual connection to her biologically. So is this something where, like, kind of like I've mentioned this before when I talk about other shows, the idea of trauma being passed down generationally. And I wonder if this is something that's manifesting in her kid, that is tied to her. Or is this something is he just like tripping? Does he need some kind of medication? Who knows? But the idea of introducing something supernatural on top of everything they've already laid out, the idea of, what was the other thing I mentioned? Who cares? I've forgotten already. Oh, the postcard mystery, the symbol mystery. That is interesting as well. So, like I said, a little bit of concern about the potential of them, like right now I think we're good, but I'd be a little concerned if now episode 3 introduces more stuff, and it's kind of like, okay, are we putting too much on our plate here? Because if you have a full plate of ideas and concepts, you keep adding shit on, stuff could start falling off, and then now we're like, okay, well, we completely forgot about blank storyline or blank theme that was interesting in favor of introducing new shit every week. But I'm still very much on board at this point. The other thing that I thought was interesting, before I get into some of the thoughts, kind of like random thoughts that I had about the episode, but one of the things I want to explore a little bit before we wrap up is I think it's interesting what they're doing with Shauna as well. So Shauna has, like I mentioned last week, is married to Jeff, who was dating Jackie in 1996. We still don't know what happened to Jackie, but I have some thoughts on that in a moment. We know that she married Jeff. This week, we see that they're having marital issues. They're not having sex. Their therapist suggests that they try some new stuff. And Jeff wants to role play. It's a lame fucking role play. Like, I want you to pretend you're a customer at my furniture store, but whatever. They want to do some role playing, and Shauna just cannot get into it. And I think there's something there, before I even like really get into it, I think there's something there about Shauna, something there to discuss regarding Shauna not being able to get into pretend. Like the fact that she lived the kind of shit that is in movies and shit like that, like stuff that's like completely unreal to most of us, the idea of surviving something like that and doing whatever they inevitably went through. Pretending to be a customer at a furniture store is probably even stupider to Shauna than it is to all the rest of us. But she can't get into it. And then later, well, not later, but also during the episode, she has an incident where she rear ends this guy. And this guy, I'm not sure how I feel about this angle either. The fact that this guy got out of this car and immediately started flirting with her almost felt, it didn't feel genuine at all. Like, who does that? Like Shauna could be like the hottest person in the world, but you get out of the car after being rear-ended, you're still going to be pissed. Like, you're not immediately going to start turning on the charm. And like that felt a little weird to me. But this guy clearly flirts with her. he writes the phone number for this body shop on her arm. That was corny, by the way. He writes the number for this body shop on her arm, and we find out later that there was a number to his shop, and he was going to fix the car for free if she agreed to go out to dinner with him, which she does not. And then after that conversation, she sees a rabbit outside, which she then prepares for her family in some chili. And after that, she now is like invigorated by this. Like she's that passion has been awakened in her. And it's interesting to me, the idea of violence causing Shauna to feel alive again. Like oh, I'm ready to have some passion and live a little bit. Like, oh, it was so great cooking that rabbit and feeding it to my family. Like I find that very interesting, and I feel like Shauna is probably going to have one of the more interesting stories with her between her and Misty of what happened at the crash site and how it's affected them as adults. Because like I really like the idea of her tying like her passion and her life and being invigorated by violence, and then like the idea of her also what was the thing I said at the beginning? I forgot already. Oh yeah, her not being interested in like regular people role playing. Like I bet if Jeff wanted to role play like a strange society where Shauna's in charge and they like eat people and shit, she'd probably be all into that role playing. So yeah, there was a lot of really interesting stuff here. So really, I'm a little teeny bit concerned that they might start piling on too much stuff before they start providing answers. But everything that they did this week, I did still find interesting. I did still find this to be an incredibly entertaining episode. And then I have a few thoughts I'm going to close out with. So I like both times now when they've shown the plane crash. I feel like that is legit scary because I think they do a good job of making it feel like what it would be like to be in that situation. Like seeing like the plane kind of like downward nose diving like that, and the tilted trees like out of the window, and that feeling of quickly moving toward the ground, and then seeing like in this episode someone's like impaled through the neck, someone caught fire, like all that kind of madness was super scary. So I think they're doing a great job with the tension whenever they show the events on the plane. Let's see. When Misty is getting bullied on the phone by those kids, like I mentioned earlier, and they, the whole anal thing or whatever, she says, it's your opinion that I'm ugly, because they call her ugly. She says that's your opinion, and the opinion is the wilderness between ignorance and knowledge. And then she says that was Plato. I thought that's a great quote. So I looked it up, and Plato did say that, but he said that it is opinion is the medium between knowledge and ignorance, which is not insulting at all. and saying wilderness is incredibly insulting, I feel like. So I kind of like that slight tweak in that phrase to make it have a little bit more zing. So I thought that was pretty cool. How did you guys feel about the scene where I think when Laura Lee says that all this happened because she called her piano teacher a cunt in her head, and then everyone starts laughing and they're telling stories. Someone says has this TJ Maxx scam. I think it was Jackie said that she was trying to watch Color Money to see Bruce Willis's dick. And they're all like laughing uproariously, and I feel like that was meant to come off like, oh, look at them like still having some sort of normalcy within tragedy. But I kind of felt like it's too early for that. Like, I feel like they still shouldn't quite be in the mood to laugh. Like, it just felt weird to me to have them like having that big of a laugh in that moment. I don't know. I see what they were trying to do, but I felt like that was a little bit much for so early. Let's see. Lottie, we see taking a medication called loxapine, which we saw in episode 1. It's being like given to her at like a breakfast table by a maid, and then we see her again kind of like sneaking off to take it in the woods. And I didn't look it up, last week, but I looked it up this week, and that's an antipsychotic for people with schizophrenia. And if Lottie is taking medication for schizophrenia, it makes me think that was probably Lottie at the beginning of episode 1, the one who's running and falls onto the branches in that trap, because it immediately stuck out to me that the person running was wearing a nightgown in the snow. Like that I don't know, for some reason that jumped out to me. And I feel like we know something has to come of this because they're there for 19 months. She ain't got a 19-month supply of her schizophrenia medication. That shit's gonna run out in like a week. So like I feel like there was, when we saw it, I feel like there was like not very many pills left in there. Is she gonna start having a psychotic break, which could lead to the whole thing of her running around in a nightgown, yada yada yada. So I'm really excited to see where that's gonna go, especially if master manipulator Misty maybe takes the pills prematurely or does something like that to kind of almost like induce this psychosis in Lottie. Like I could see Misty doing something like that, because we already know how Misty does people when they need medication, based on episode 1 with her taking that old lady's not taking the old, but refusing to give that old lady morphine because she knocked that food on the floor. So we've already seen that Misty can help you if you are in dire need. She helped everybody after this crash, but we also see that if you fuck with Misty, she will fuck with your medication. So that's real interesting too, to see where that goes. So that's all I got for this week. Really enjoying the show. Let me know what you thought in the comments about that scene with them laughing. Let me know what you thought if you've made it to this part of the video. Let me know what you think about why this episode was called F sharp. I couldn't think of it. Maybe it's because my head is so stuck on music as it pertains to the term F sharp, and I can't wrap my head around what happened in this episode that would make it have a musical title like F sharp. So maybe I missed something, but let me know what you think there, and I'll see you guys next week for episode 3. Peace.